Hey, Justin, how are you?
Hey Ram, I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Feels like Thanksgiving was a month ago at this point now.
It does. Well, we are technically in December, so it was last month.
We are. We're in December, new holiday season. I got the Christmas music going on. It's a lot happening
Nice.
here. But Charlie Munger passed away 2 days ago,
No.
and Byron Wien passed away a month ago, a legendary investment strategist.
Sandra
His
Day
last,
O'Connor passed away as well. So for all those legal minds out there, that was a sad loss. I think Sandra Day O'Connor was an iconic
oh, huh, I missed that.
jurist for sure. But you've spent a lot of time talking about Warren Buffett. Obviously, Munger's his business partner. So maybe share a little bit of your thoughts on Charlie and the lessons you learned from him.
Sure. Well, first off, it definitely had a felt effect on me. You read someone's writing and you have an access to how they think. And he led his life with wit and wisdom. And I try to learn as much as I can. In fact, over the last 6 months, I don't know how many posts I've actually done about Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger. Even last weekend, Thanksgiving, I wrote about what are world class business models. And that was inspired by taking what Munger calls mental models and then applying that to the world and generating different ideas. So that approach and framework, I think, is many lessons to learn from. We could do a whole show on it. One I'd call out is the importance of psychology and the importance of temperament over analysis. And
Yeah, I think that's a great one. Temperament, but also resilience. I think
resilience as
Charlie
well.
Munger is a story of resilience that's I didn't know the details of, but when he passed, a lot of people and a lot of stories came out that added a lot of nuance and depth to my understanding of his life. Obviously, he's most famous for Berkshire Hathaway, and he's 99 years old. So he's had a long life. So rewinding the tape to when he's in his 30s is far beyond the lifespan of Berkshire Hathaway or any of my intimate knowledge of his capabilities. But I was struck by the story of resilience that I learned and read about, which was that actually at age 29, after serving in the war, he ended up divorcing his first wife that had been married
Wow.
to for 8 years. A year later, his 8-year-old son was diagnosed with leukemia. You know, terrible disease at
Yeah,
any time in history, but the medical advances that we've made in the decades since then are tremendous, especially for childhood leukemia. A year after that, his son passed. So at the age of like 31, this person who 68 years later ends up dying as a revered investor and a billionaire dozens of times over was broke, uh, really in a deep state of despair after having lost his son and divorcing his wife. And to think about the resilience that one must have to go from that place to where he ended up, it's inspiring.
absolutely. The psychological resilience is it's a core part of investing. He always conducted himself with a sunny, optimistic disposition about the United States as well. And he refactored his life multiple times. Like you, Justin, he was also a former practicing lawyer
He
who
was.
then became an investor. I think there's another lesson there on the power of twos. Great
Tell me more
organization.
about that.
Look at, say, Apple, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. That's one. Microsoft, you had Bill Gates and
Alan.
thank you, Paul Allen. Oracle, you had Larry Ellison and Ray Lane.
Mm,
So the power of twos. Two's a magic number. Twos come up a lot in philosophy as well, in concepts of like duality and balance and this and that. And I think my prior first startup, actually, before startups were even like a word. You can call them startups back then. You were just trying to build a business. I worked with, we're building a statistical arbitrage strategy, and I had an engineer who did own the engineering, and I owned the strategy design and testing, and focus and specialized, and got a lot of stuff done, like you and I are doing here too. It's the same the power of twos.
Yeah. Will said, complementary skill sets are really important. No one person can handle it all or know it all.
Right. With shared values, right? There's another point that Charlie Munger and Buffett, by the way, they're both remote too, right? So Munger lived in LA. Kind of funny. Pioneered decentralized management, decentralized leadership.
That they did. It's incredible. So if you had to kind of share one piece of wisdom that you took away from Charlie Munger and his teachings, what would it be?
I might have to give you 2 or 3 because they interact.
Just at the power of 2. So let's go.
I'll summarize best I can. If you pull one prong, they interact with other prongs. Okay, so number 1 is capital allocation. So what Berkshire does is they're not only assessing opportunities in public markets, but they're also comparing that to the 80 the companies that they own, including See's Candy, insurance companies. Each of those companies, like Dairy Queen, has a project. Those projects have NPVs or IRRs. So we're looking at a broader set. And the third option is buying back their own stock. That's one. So capital allocation. They're also doing a carry trade. They're borrowing debt. They're AAA rated, but they borrow debt. That debt is non-callable, though. It's not like a margin loan. They have non-callable debt, and they get a tax deduction on that, interest expense deduction. And they invest in these businesses that throw off a lot of cash flow, have a high return on equity. So they're doing a spread capture, like a bank actually, with a couple turns of leverage. But they own quality businesses. And the third part of that is those quality businesses have a long tail of cash flows. It's not about the next 3 years. These are hold forever businesses. A simple rule of thumb is, will this business be here in 50 years? If the answer to that is yes, it's a good chance it's a Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett business. See's Candy, they bought for $25 million. They thought they overpaid. Charlie Munger talked Warren into buying that. It's returned $2 billion in capital.
Wow.
It's an 80x return. They fully depreciated that. I mean, they probably got a negative carrying value for this asset now at this point. So those are some highlights. It's an extraordinary, and the other lesson would be that world-class businesses are exceedingly rare. There's not many businesses that actually meet the criteria of being world-class, meaning you're not overly exposed to the business cycle. You have quality customers. You're a consumer staple. They tend to invest in consumer staples, like exactly. Coca-Cola, Wrigley's, right? And the ability to pass through inflation with that. And these are also a lot of confectionery products. People can have habits and rituals around them. So I think those are some highlights. I have a thread on this at a more detailed level, but I think those are the core principles and how they interact with each other.
Oh, that's fascinating. I love reading what you write about Buffett and Munger. So
big admirer. Thank you. So let's talk about psychological resilience then. You had a great story about the winner of a wrestling competition you mentioned.
Yeah. This was interesting. So I don't really watch collegiate wrestling. I do love watching sports on television, but it just happened to be on when I was getting ready to leave from where I had spent Thanksgiving. And as I was packing, I saw this match. It was Iowa State versus Iowa, which if you're into wrestling, and I know a little bit, I know that the heartland, that region of the country, wrestling is really serious. Sold out arena, right, for a college wrestling match. And this wrestler who won in an unexpected fashion in his weight class against a more highly ranked opponent was being interviewed afterwards by one of the on the field or on the mat reporters, whatever you want to call it. And he was asked how he prepared, and why he felt he had success. And it was really interesting. He didn't talk about years of effort or specific tactics or strategies. He just said, I had a really good week. I was really disciplined this week. And that brought me into this match ready to succeed. And then he said a line that stuck with me. He said, discipline is addictive. And he just stopped and like walked away at that moment. And I was just blown away by that idea. Yeah, mic drop. Exactly. You know, I was not a wrestler. I had some friends that were wrestlers. Incredible level of effort goes into kind of preparing for those matches and getting ready physically, right? Like cutting weight or whatever those things are. But the discipline cuts across lots of things, whether it's a sport or a different sport than wrestling or other facets of life. What I thought was interesting is the idea of like that virtuous cycle, that when you are disciplined, in one area of your life, you're likely to be more disciplined in another, and you
Oh,
see the
totally.
power of it. And so it becomes something that is addictive. I'd never thought of that concept of discipline being addictive, but it resonated with me.
I love it. I love it. I mean, it's its own mantra. Discipline is addictive. You can wire your dopamine circuits to the concept of discipline, and it's powerful. You're right. And wrestling requires mental toughness. I've talked to a few wrestlers. I never wrestled, and they always say it's a mental game. And wrestling is biblical. It's in the Old Testament, right? There's people that Jacob wrestles divinity or God, whatever you want to call it. These biblical tales, right? Wrestling is you're feeling pressure, and I had dinner with Stephen McBride, who's a friend, the company, and also an investor. We have similar views on certain ideas and semiconductors. We had dinner a few weeks ago, and we're talking about how do you build resilience as an investor. This is, during like the drawdown period, and it takes patience and it takes discipline. And I said, what's the first idea that you go to build that? And he said, weightlifting. I had the same idea. That's what I do with that CrossFit, right?
Yeah.
And Tommy, who we spoke to last week around his 5-MeO DMT, he is also into weightlifting. I hope that all my kids, boys and girls, can take a deep interest in lifting heavy weights, not to put on like a record number, but what it means for having physical pressure that you have to push against, and how that translates into building mental strength to push back against the adversity in the world. Like Charlie Munger must have developed that skill after the incredible adversity that he had experienced.
Yeah, no, I love that concept. I do the same thing for my children. I have a basement gym I call the Pain Cave, and it's where I spend most mornings. I'm up early. I lift 3 days a week or so, and do other cardio other days. But I was actually, funny that you mentioned kids. I was talking to my kids about this just this week when I was dropping them off at school, and I'm still recovering. I had the flu right before Thanksgiving, and I had a few issues with my son getting the flu, and my dog got into a pound of Haribo candies a few days before that. And so she ended up at the emergency vet. Long story short, I had a week of terrible sleep, and the flu capped it off. And so I'm still kind of like bouncing back from that physically. And I felt it in my workout. I felt it when I was like 2/3 of the way through a weightlifting workout. And I told my kids this, that I was laying down on the mat after 2/3 of the workout and wanted to quit. I really did. It was already like 6:20 in the morning. I was like looking at the clock thinking, am I going to be able to finish this before I need to get up and get ready? And it would have been so easy to pack it in. And And that moment happens in lots of things. Like you're writing a long email and you're like, I'll finish it later. Or you're working through a project, you'll deal with it later. Or you've got to have that tough talk with, you know, your spouse or your sibling or something. You just like put it off because, you know, you don't want to have to do it.
Right.
It's difficult stuff. But the act of doing it repeatedly in the face of a challenge makes it easier to do it in the future. And so I told my kids this because I had the, whatever you want to say, whether it was the discipline or the resilience to finish the workout. And it actually helped me carry through in other things because I thought, oh, I was able to do that, even though I really did not
It
want
does.
to at all.
I love it. Yeah. And that, you touched on a few things. One is carrying on to other things. It's so true. When I have a good exercise routine, I have a good eating routine, I have a good sleep routine, and all areas of my life are working in harmony. And I get more time, so I don't need as much sleep, and I get more stuff done per unit of time and impact. So I agree. Discipline is the killer app in a world where everyone is having their attention pulled in many different directions, from social media to Slack and all the rest. Being able to focus and develop that skill of discipline, it's powerful.
Yeah, you know what helps me? It's super simple, and I certainly am not the person who came up with it. Somebody else did. But I have this like little timer I use on my desk.
Oh,
And I just kind of put down, you know, how much time I'm going to dedicate to a particular project. And when I put the timer in front of me, it like really helps the discipline.
that's cool. You have a prompt.
Yeah, I have like a little routine, a little prompt. I'll just say, oh, okay, let's just work uninterrupted for 30 minutes.
I like
And
that.
having the clock there helps. My wife thinks I'm crazy because she's like, why don't you just put it on your phone? You've got a timer on your phone. But then I'm
Not the
messing with
same.
a device that's super distracting. I'm going to let one of my dogs out of the office.
Sure. I like that. I got another stocking stuffer. The timer.
Timer works. It does. It's
Very
a
cool.
good one. So speaking of
Well, I think
stuffers, we talked about gifts before. I'm gonna bend your ear on this one again because the time is nigh, right? Like we've only got a few weeks. Did you come up with any other gifts that I can kind of use?
Oh boy. I got the Whoop. Here's the Whoop.
Nice.
It's charging right now. Not bad. It's a decent one. AirPods are seemingly always welcome. That should have been a Cyber Monday play though. If you missed that one, then you gotta. Then another move is Costco. By the way, Costco actually has pretty good gift ideas that they curate. I think maybe that's what dads just start going to Costco and we kind of tune out the rest of the world. Costco is my experience of retail now. I've heard about this thing called like athleisure and like Lululemon, but it's like Costco.
Your Kirkland brand.
Yeah, Kirkland brands are pretty good. Custom fit suits and shirts for men. I don't wear suits so much anymore, or custom fit blazer, but I appreciate them. I appreciate a good blazer. This is custom fit, actually. The tailor coming from Hong Kong takes measurements, New York. He writes them down and then gives me a swatch. I can select different kinds of designs and all that. That's a lot of fun.
That's a good one. I was wondering if there was going to be any Charlie Munger inspired.
Oh yeah, readings. Sorry. Right. I mean, Charlie Munger, Charlie's Almanac, Poor Charlie's Almanac. Thank you. Also had bad sleep last night. That's a very good one. They have a book they wrote together too called Business Adventures. There's another book that James Altucher, who people probably may recognize, he wrote a book analyzing all of the annual letters since day one. That's an interesting read as well. I'm not going to recommend Snowball, which is a biography written about Buffett. It's just terribly written. It's like just obtuse language. There's some nuggets here and there, But so I'm not going to recommend that one. A lot of books around these two. Just read my thread, and you'll get the main ideas on that part of it. But these other resources, I think, could be helpful too.
There we go. All right, so back to discipline. You're talking about the workout routine, moving heavy weight as part of that resilience. How do you think that has helped you build resilience for yourself?
It is willingly enduring pressure and suffering and deferral of immediate gratification for a longer term objective. But you do get some satisfaction immediately after completing it. So you have a project, you have a task, you got to do it, and it's hard. So I do think that there's something basic in it, like wrestling that we talked about earlier. It's also in the Greek and Roman traditions, and being strong. It's like an ancestral tradition. Be healthy and fit.
Yeah.
The Olympics, the millennia old, and physical fitness translates to mental fitness. Isn't there some connection between those?
Oh, absolutely. Well, it's actually very interesting too that when you lift enough weights, you start to realize, sure, there's like your muscles get bigger and get stronger, but a huge factor, and I'm sure there's data to back this up and like numbers you could put to it. I don't know those off the top of my head, but the mind and muscle connection is really what you're enhancing when you lift, so that you have the capability to mentally communicate with your muscles to move more weight. So like if you ever take off time from lifting, the first times you go back, you're not moving as much weight. And sometimes people are like, oh, I'm just out of it. I've lost a lot of strength. And then you rapidly gain back strength. Well, your muscles didn't like gain 25% of their strength in a couple of sessions. What happened was your mind muscle connection improved and perhaps returned to where it was. So your body remembered that it was able to move this much weight. So there's a tremendous connection between the mind and the muscles.
I love it. I love it. And it also reminds you of your potential. When I have to learn a new movement or graduate to a different skill, I say to myself, oh, I can't do that. And then you get the nudge, or you see someone else and they inspire you, or you push yourself and you do it, and you eradicate that limiting belief as well. So, it builds that internal confidence in your ability to handle come what may, whatever life is going to throw at you. If you got a good workout in the morning, you're on your road to having a good day.
Oh yeah, I firmly believe that. It's my favorite part of the morning is the period right after I've worked out. If there's nobody still up in the house, the silence, because it's just like I'm with myself and I've already accomplished so much. I already feel good as a result. It kind of sets up the day for success.
Absolutely.
So do you have any of these moves or things that you're working on right now that you're
from a weightlifting perspective? I like the basics. Deadlifts are the most satisfying exercise in the world for me. So a deadlift is when you reach down to the ground and you pick up like an Olympic bar that's got weight on both sides, and the different variations on that, like the trap squat, of course. But I find that incredibly satisfying, and it also like just burns off negative energy, stress, frustration, whatever you might have accumulated through the day, whatever it might be. The deadlifts are the best for that. And then squats. It's something about activating the leg muscles. I believe it is about the leg muscles.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Definitely the majority of your musculature,
right,
is in your lower half.
Right. Yeah. Deadlifts and squats. How about yourself? Those two do for me. I'm a happy camper. I like the row machine too. Row machine's fun.
Yeah, I love those. I've had some issues with deadlifts physically where I've like hurt myself in the past going too heavy. So I tend to not go as heavy, and I tend to use a trap bar instead of a traditional, just to kind of
Yeah,
protect the back, because getting
of course.
injured just
Yeah,
sucks the life out of you.
form matters, which is another point of discipline. The form
Yeah,
matters, quality.
yeah, exactly. So I do love those, but I also love pull-ups and dips. So like weighted dips and weighted pull-ups are
Those are
just
fun.
are
I
really
used
neat.
to enjoy that in my 20s when I could do them. I think I'm getting back to them now. Those are yeah, those are satisfying too. I agree.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know they are. It's the same kind of concept of just like moving weight, whether it's your body weight or something else. It's like heavy. Like I don't need to go do curls or something like that. Like,
Yeah, those are vanity exercises. Like, what are you trying to? Who are you trying to impress at the beach here? Come on.
yeah.
Really?
When I
No
used
one
to live
cares.
in Florida, I maybe I went to the beach more often. Now in DC, I don't get to see the beach.
Yeah, I want strong legs. I want good VO2 max. I have to improve upon that. By the way, I got a DEXA scan 2 days ago. We can talk about that some other time. I
Oh,
was
nice.
disappointed in the findings because
Yeah,
I'm doing heavy lifts, and my T scores relative to uh, the young adult is not where I want it to be. So
that's the bone density. The
bone
bone
density,
density.
yeah, bone
Ah,
density,
interesting.
yeah. So you
But
might
now you have
think,
the data though.
oh, well, it was a facility that not only do they do DEXA scans, but they do VO2 max. By the way, they do like brain scans. They measure like response times, and they also complement like nutrition counseling. It's super, super cool. We might have to like interview them at some point. They've got facilities
Yeah.
all around the United States. So I went in there, 15 minutes, and it was done. They emailed me a report, and I have to have the post report counseling session to ask them a few questions around it. But the other part is like, I regularly work out 3 to 4 times a week. I got back into it after I had an appendix taken early summer, so I was off the
That's
wagon
right.
for 3 months, but I got back into it. That's been another 3 months. But my results are not what I expected. So I think people might say, oh, look, I eat healthy, I exercise, I work out, or maybe your spouse looks healthy, but they're not going to the gym. But you're like, you know what? They look great. They're active. They're getting their 10,000 steps. But I think that DEXA scan helps to test that perception and give you a measurement so you can hold yourself accountable. I'm motivated now. I'm like, all right, can I go from 3 days to 4 days consistently per week? All right, what other changes can I make to increase bone density, etc.?
Yeah, I think that the data is so critical, right? Because now you're not guessing. It's not a hypothesis. It's not anecdotal. It's real hard data that says, here's where you are, whether you want to be somewhere different or not, at least you know. And then if you want to be somewhere different, now you kind of have that first data point to see and compare how implementing some type of change in your process and protocols and diet and exercise regime, whether that has the effect that you want. It's interesting though, from like a health perspective, because there is like the vanity component and then there's the health component.
Right.
I recently interviewed Dr. Tyler Cooper, who's the CEO of the Cooper Clinic, which is a renowned clinic for preventative medicine in Dallas that was founded by Tyler Cooper's father, Dr. Cooper, who actually literally wrote the book Aerobics.
Wow.
Yeah, incredible,
This
incredible
other wrote
conversation.
the book and coined the term aerobics.
Correct.
Wow.
Yes. There was no concept of aerobics before Dr. Cooper. So
He
like
he created like the 80s aerobics movement, basically.
he did, and he did it in like the late 60s, early 70s.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's a fascinating interview, fascinating background there. But what he shared with me that I think
Huh.
is really interesting about this is the life extension that you
Yeah.
achieve from exercise. The majority of it is just getting out of the bottom quintile of
Oh,
uh,
fascinating.
health. So getting out of the bottom 20%, I believe he said adds like 4 to 6 years onto people's lives because we're in such bad shape as a society.
Right.
It's like
Yeah.
you may be saying to yourself, hey, I want to get into better shape, and good for you. Like, I encourage you to do what works best for you, but don't also forget to like compare yourself to the broader society. It's just like you're probably guaranteeing based on just knowing you, you're out of that bottom 20%. So you already have the life extending benefits of the exercise that you do 3 days a week, whatever. Everything else on top of that, it's important, and you got to do what works best for you and achieve the goals you want to set out to. But you do already probably have the benefit of a lot of life extending benefits from
Very
exercise
cool.
and nutrition.
That's great. That's exciting. I mean, I want to listen more to that. So that'll be on the Lumina Legacy podcast. Has that dropped on Spotify and Apple yet, or
It is dropping this weekend, I believe.
this weekend? Okay, cool.
Yes.
It's on YouTube, I believe, too, right? So, Dr. Cooper, tune in. Exciting. Well, shall we leave it there?
We shall. All right, Ron. Have a great weekend.
Likewise, bud.
See you,
Be well.